Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University of Nairobi, I would like to warmly welcome Right Honorable Raila Odinga, former Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya.
Our guest today, Mr. Darren Walker, the Chancellor of the University of Nairobi, the Vice Chancellor, the Chairperson of the Council, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am very delighted to have been invited to make some remarks following such an interesting conversation with Mr. Darren Walker. I come here not as a stranger, because in at the early incarnation, I used to talk here in Taifa Hall. And we have also held very lively discussions here in Taifa Hall. So I'm very pleased to join you again here in the new year, when I've just celebrated my birthday. Yes, but I want to first thank the Ford Foundation for what they have done to this institution and to our country generally. When Mr. Walker was talking, he said, this is one of the most beautiful halls in the world. I think he was trying to advertise what the Ford Foundation has done for this hall. Well, it is true that the Ford Foundation has really been a partner in development in our country. They have assisted us in several areas, particularly this of manpower development in our country, but also in work of trying to improve governance in our country. They have worked with us even in our journey toward democracy. I remember in 2012, after what we have been through during the 2008, I was one of the beneficiaries who was awarded a champion of democracy by the Ford Foundation, and I'm very grateful. I was asked to make some few remarks after that discussion, but I made some notes, but I found that they're not really up to date. So I'm going to talk basically from my heart. The subject here has been about inequality and bridging the gap in inequality. In other words, we are assuming first that there's inequality. And I believe that there's no country in the world today where there is no inequalities. The issue is the gap in the society and what is being done about that gap. That's the most important thing. And here I want to talk from the African context because I'm a Pan-Africanist and an Afro-optimist. See, there are Afro-pessimists, those who have given up on Africa, who say that Africa is a lost continent, basket economists, and so on. And then there are optimists are those who believe in Africa and the ability of the African people to develop Africa. This is important. Because Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of resources. The paradox is that the richest continent is also the poorest, as far as the living condition of the people is concerned. When those who believe in creation, when God created the world, he did not start in Europe, went through America, and ended up in Africa. It was all the same time they said 6 days, and they rested on the seventh day. But why is it that we describe some part of the world as developed and others as developing? This is because of what the human being has been able to do in those societies. We have been giving excuses that, oh, colonialism. But colonialism is long gone, 50 years. The United States was a colony of Britain. So was India. So was Malaysia, and so on and so forth. And they've done something about it. What is it? So there's something that was amiss, which was not included here. The issue of governance. Governance is fairly responsible for extreme inequalities that we have in our society and extreme poverty in our country. We talk of Africa before 1990 and Africa post-1990. Africa before 1990, from the time of independence, 1990, those are the days of bad governance in Africa. The days of military coups, the single-party dictatorships, and so on, where there was complete stagnation. But that thing was basically exacerbated by the Cold War, which was reigning at that time. In those days, so long as you said that you were an ally of the West in the war against communism, nobody cared what you're doing in your own country. You get all the support that you want. You got all the aid that you wanted. Those days. So do not talk about governance. That's how we created the dinosaurs in Africa. Idi Amin of Uganda could kill hundreds of thousands of Ugandans and still become the chairman of OAU. Mobutu Sese Seko, Kungwaza Banga in Congo, which he renamed Zaire. Jean Badel Bokassa of Central African Republic crowned himself as the emperor in Africa. Kamuzu Banda, Ngwazi, could go on a live BBC interview and say that if any of his opponents, Chiuma and Chipembere, dare to set foot in Malawi, there would be delicious meals for the crocodiles in River Zambezi. So that is how Africa was governed. And those are the years of stagnation. Debts, aid, which did not do anything, most of it finding its way back to bank accounts out there, and no development. So most of the economies in Africa were HIPICs, highly indebted economies. Then came the Berlin Wall. When the Berlin Wall fell, and the wind of change began to blow in Eastern Europe, it found its way on the African continent. It brought down most of those dinosaurs, the military dictators, and the single-party dictatorships came tumbling down. And multi-party systems were established on the continent of Africa. Then we reintroduced political competition in our governance on the continent. So that you can see from the 90s that there has been growth in our continent. That this period has seen very high rate of growth. By the World Bank account, 2 years ago, for the last 10 years, out of the 10 fastest growing economies, 6 were on the African continent. So things are not static in our country. But as we talk about the rate of growth, we also need to talk about a sharing of that wealth in this country. Because that can be growing, you can be giving figures, but people down the ladder continue to grow poorer and poorer. And that's what needs to be addressed. Darren talked of the population bulge, demographic bulge in the continent. Over 70% of our population in the continent are below the age of 35 years. So it means that Africa is a very young continent compared to Europe, America, Japan, which are aging societies. Now they are increasing the retirement age, so they're going to 70s. Here in Africa, we have a lot of youth. And this youth is what you do with that youth. Youth can be a blessing or a curse, depending on how you deal with it. If this youth is not empowered, they'll become delinquents, they become drug addicts, they become criminals, and basically a scourge in society. But if they're empowered, given proper education, proper skills, then can become force for wealth creation. This is what countries like China have done, India, Korea, and so on. They have empowered the youth, giving them equal opportunity from the very beginning. That every youth born in the society gets equal opportunity to realize its given potential. From the nursery right up to the higher levels of learning. That irrespective of the socio-economic background of the parents. This is important. Because if this is done, then the youth is empowered. The youth will be able to compete in the society. Darren said he came from not a very rich society, but he had opportunity through public schools and is now what he is today because he had the opportunity to do so. And that's why we're talking about giving our youth equal opportunity to realize their potential. This is important, very important. Because once that is done, then our youth will be able to compete. I asked a youth to tell me what he thinks, how the youth can be empowered to compete. And then this is what the youth wrote to me. The fundamental key to bridging the inequality gap on the continent is providing access to technology. Everywhere I go, in every corner of this country, young people all own phones. On these devices, they are communicating, they are learning, they are sharing, they are buying, they are inventing and solving problems. Julius Yego, who is one of our accomplished Olympians, learned how to throw the javelin through the YouTube. In Nigeria, a bobsleigh team learned the sport on the internet. In this hall today, anybody watching Citizen TV can tweet and participate in the discussion. Young people don't have to leave their homes to get degrees. And now I challenge this institution to increase the number of online courses they offer. So that a young orphan in Mamboleo that has to work and take care of her younger siblings and may not be able to make it to the class does need to be left behind. With adequate access to internet, she too can study in her free time and be given the opportunity to learn. The wheels of government may take time, but technology is fast and the right tools can bridge the gap. That is the prescription of one person. And I agree with this. because that's why I'm talking about empowering the youth. That if the youth are empowered, they are able to participate in wealth creation, and that will help to bridge the gap in the country. But then there's a scourge, which the former Chief Justice talked about, of corruption. Corruption exists in every society. The difference is what is done about it when it's discovered. How many scandals have you heard of in the United States? But the culprits are arrested and are prosecuted and are actually punished. The same thing in the UK, in Germany, in Japan, in China, they're even more harsher. These people involved in mega corruption. But what the Chief Justice did not tell you is what role is the judiciary is playing in this matter. He was actually the head of the judiciary. Is the judiciary participating fully in this war? When the culprits have been arrested, culprits have been evidence has been taken to court, then they're given bail, and they're able to go back to work, and they're being treated as angels who are just being molested by society. You're accused of some of the worst crimes, murder, most foul, and you're allowed to go back and work and fire people, interfere with evidence. I mean, what have you been told? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the president presented to Parliament what was called a list of shame. Public servants who were suspected of having committed certain crimes. They were asked, all of them, to step aside immediately as the investigations were going on. Here in the university, if somebody is suspected, is interdicted. And if you're interdicted, you are either on half pay or no pay. You only report once a week or once in 2 weeks. But here's a case where evidence has already been taken to court and he's been prosecuted. He's allowed to go back to the office and work and destroy all the evidence that's there. So judiciary, is the judiciary an ally in the war against corruption? The question that must be asked. But that is relevant because it was mentioned during this discourse here. But I am very pleased with this issue. This is a subject that we need to deal with. We need to deal with in dealing with issues of governance, dealing with issues of opportunities in our society. And I talked about Canaan this other time. And people are saying, which Canaan? And I'm telling them that, look, this is what I call the Kenyan dream. And the Kenyan dream was coined by the founding fathers of our nation. And we find it in our national anthem. The first stanza says that God bless this land of ours. Justice be our shield and defender. May we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Plenty be found within our borders. What is it? First, a God-fearing nation. Two, justice be our shield and defender. Justice can only be a shield and defender if there's democracy. So a democratic society. And we dwell in unity, peace and liberty. Unity, people who are united. There's no discrimination on the basis of ethnicity, race, religion, or gender. And people who are liberated and peaceful. Peace does not mean the absence of war. Because somebody who is hungry is not peaceful. Then he says that plenty be found within our borders. That plenty was not going to be dropped like manna from heaven. It was going to come through the sweat and toil of the people of Kenya. They're going to create that wealth. And that will be when the people are empowered. They're given equal opportunity to learn so that they can be able to be wealth creators. If they are sick, each one of them, whether they have money or no money, can get quality Medicare. And if they have finished education like those who are here, who have now studied, they'll be able to get meaningful employment commensurate with their qualifications. Then, you create, that is where plenty is found. And the plenty that is found in the Bible, and I see Professor Gutu there, was Canaan. So that is the Canaan we are taking the Kenyan people. It was not a Canaan in heaven. It was a Canaan here, that we turn our country into a Canaan. And when we were moving, then we reached River Jordan. And we found that it was infested by crocodiles. So we moved backwards. And then I met with my brother. I told him, look, you are going to Misri and we are going to Canaan. Let us build bridges so that we can cross over to Canaan together. Thank you very much.